Yeah, because if I turn it, look like if I turn it, it goes upside down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So this is
cool.
cool.
So yeah, man. So how you doing? How'd you like that episode of the Last Dance? What'd you think?
Man, all of them are good. An hour feel like it goes by in 15 minutes. It's just amazing how engaging it is. And obviously, I remember all those games, all those plays, but just seeing it again, I just think ESPN they've done an excellent job with the documentary. I watched it with my family. I'm over by my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law's house, and they were glued to the screen as well.
Yeah. So what has been the most surprising thing that you've garnered from watching The Last Dance?
I think the most surprising thing for me of watching all 8 episodes so far is just how much of an idiot Jerry Krause was. To break up dynasty like that. I mean, it's unbelievable, man. When we played Steven back in the day, I used to always ask myself, what is Michael Jordan doing in a Washington Wizards uniform? But I just had no idea the relationship was that bad, man. And to see somebody let their ego get the best of them and run off the greatest player of all time, the number one draw in the history of sports, it makes you scratch your head. I just can't fathom it. I mean, it's like an organization's dream to get a guy that's winning and that's selling out every night, and he runs him off. So I just, I don't get that one.
Agreed, but I think that's really a cautionary tale for everyone because I think in everyone's life there comes a moment where your ego gets the best of you and you forget who you are, you forget how you got there, you forget the people that helped you get where you are, and if you're fortunate, you don't have that huge fall from grace like Jerry Krause did, but I think for the most part more than 50% of the people do something derogatory to their career, much like what happened with Scottie Pippen. I mean, that's the same thing that happened to Krause happened to Pip, on that last second shot with Kukoc. And what did you think when Pip said, if he could do it all over again, he would do it over again?
It didn't surprise me. I mean, that's the ego I think you got to have if you're a great player. I mean, he said it was an insult, and I can see why. If you're the man on the team, you expect to get the ball. I couldn't imagine when I played for the Rockets, Rudy talking about we're not going to give the ball to Elijah Wan. We're going to give it to Eldridge Recasner or Sam Cassell or somebody. I mean, we might have ended up with the last shot, but I think it would have had to go through Dream. And I think Scottie just felt like, he wanted it to go through him. Not saying that he probably wouldn't have given the ball to Kukoc because he was a real unselfish player, but I can understand where he's coming from. When you're the top dog on the team, you want that last shot.
But as I said, there's different type of top dogs. You have a Michael Jordan who's an alpha, he's an apex predator, but Pip was more of a facilitator. He was more of a Robin. So, I mean, I can understand where you look at Kukoc, where he came from, but Kukoc is kind of a facilitator as well. But I think, you got to go with your leader, which is the coach. But, I can see both sides of that argument. Definitely, especially again when kind of overnight you're like, okay, I got to be MJ on this team, and even though he led a little bit differently, he still was like, hey, I still have to be the guy guys look to in the huddle, and maybe he felt like I'm going to lose some respect if I don't do something right now to say that I want the shot, because maybe he felt like he needed to earn that from Phil. I mean, who knows what was going through his head.
I think a lot of it had to do with the pressure of being a leader without Michael. He wanted to establish his own identity as the main guy. If he's not getting the last shot, how you gonna do that? Because I can't imagine Phil drawing up a play for Tony Kukoc if Jordan was on the team.
No,
that wouldn't have happened.
No.
So I thought he was under a lot of pressure, man. All the talk about Michael's not here. Can you win it without him? And he just wanted to establish himself as the main guy on that team. And I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I ain't mad at him, but I can understand. When you think about the team, you got to put the team first, and he put himself before the team. So I think that's probably his only regret.
I need to ask you right now where you're at, because I notice you're doing the ultimate flex with the light behind you. It's dark here, so like where are you at?
I'm at my in-laws' house, but I'm in the backyard. Everybody's in the house. I didn't want it to be now. Is it too loud out here?
No. I mean, what area are you at? Obviously,
are you? I'm in
okay?
The park area of Seattle. Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
3 or 4 blocks from the lake, man. Yeah, my in-laws got a nice spot, man. My father-in-law is a U.S. federal judge, so he's living like he was picked in the lottery, man.
Hey, not mad at that. Well, speaking of Seattle, that kind of leads me to one of my questions. You started at University of Washington. You had a nice career, three-time All Pac-10 conference selection, three-time captain. So you obviously had a lot of leadership roles with your team. What was the most special moment that you can recall being a Husky?
Oh, it's easy because we just watched The Last Dance, and it was playing against Gary Payton, and beating him my senior year because Gary was always talking shit. So, but one
Man,
thing I'll say about GP, man, he always backed it up. And when he said he didn't back down for Mike, I believe it because outside of Michael Jordan, when I think about the NBA, the next most competitive driven guy I think I played against was Gary Payton. But our senior year, Sports Illustrated was following Gary around. He was their pick for player of the year that year. And I'll never forget it, man. We played a game at Heck Ed, which is our home court here in Seattle. And I was the captain for my team. He was the captain for their team, but he wouldn't shake my hand. So it really pissed me off. And I had a pretty good game. And we beat GP in Oregon State. And I think that's probably my most memorable moment of playing for UW.
so did he shake everybody else's hand and not
Yeah,
yours?
nobody's hand. Gary was always
Okay.
trying to get a mental advantage on you, man.
So
That's just but I
what
got
was the
talked a lot of trash, but he backed it up.
speaking of him talking trash, what was the craziest thing that he said to you? Do you remember anything during that series right there, that game?
He didn't say it to me, but he was saying it to my friends who were sitting behind our bench, at the game. They were talking about, oh, my boy L's giving you the business. He was like, yeah, but I'm about to go in the lottery and make $1 million a year. Now, what you got to say about that? So GP was always talking smack, man.
Yeah, he was, and you're right. He could back it up, and that was something special about him. What is, as far as your team, what was the best year for you at Washington? Where did y'all end up?
Well, so, team-wise, we never had a lot of success, Steven. My freshman year, we had a guy named Chris Velp. I don't know if you remember him, but he got
Yeah.
drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers. He was a 7-foot German. That year we made the NCAA tournament. He was a really good player. Then after that, man, we just kind of tanked it. My best year personally, I feel, was my sophomore year. I think I only averaged 17, but I had a really, really good year, man. I remember one game I had 30 against Arizona with Sean Elliott and Steve Kerr when they were number one in the country. I think that was my best year overall, but we just didn't have a lot of success. I was going through a bunch of old tapes. I sent you that link when you were introducing the starting five, and we played DePaul.
Well, I
I
actually
think
read
before that,
somewhere. I read somewhere that was the biggest victory of all time at Washington, beating DePaul on WGN in Chicago. So
really.
no, I'm just playing with you. I'm just playing with you. I'm just playing with
Yeah, so we played you guys home in a way. I think one year we played in Seattle. They had Rod Strickland. You guys had a really good team, man. And one of my good friends, Kevin Holland, because I was watching that video when you were in the starting lineup, and I was like, I knew Kevin was on his team, but Kevin told me he was hurt, so he didn't play that game, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. And a lot of people probably don't know, man, but Stanley Brundy that played with you guys in DePaul is actually from New Orleans. Me and Stanley grew up playing biddy basketball together. And biddy basketball is I guess it's like Little League when you play on an 8-foot hoop. And he was a monster then, man. We were in the 5th and 6th grade. He just was a beast. So it didn't surprise me that he went on to have a great career at DePaul.
Yeah, amazing. I learned so much from Stan. I mean, we had totally different games, but I think that's where I really got my conditioning and just, Stan was great at, he would always beat the big men down the court and he would just position himself. And so I would, absorb a lot of the stuff that he would do as and just try to learn because, like you said, he was such an amazing player. So as far as you being the captain, three-time captain, what type of leader were you at Washington? Like, how did you lead?
Looking back, Steven, man, I wish I could have been a different type of leader. I wasn't a very encouraging guy. Not that I look back, because I'm from the inner city of New Orleans, man. And you got to be tough. And when
Yeah,
guys weren't, I just couldn't deal with it, So instead of encouraging guys, I was cussing guys out. I wish I could have been a little bit more encouraging, looking back, because everybody doesn't have the same personality. Everybody doesn't have that. You look at Michael Jordan, you see how driven he was, but then you look at Scottie Pippen, completely different type of player, and one of the differences I see, there's a lot of talk about who's the best, LeBron or Michael, and one of the differences I see with LeBron is kind of encouraging, supportive type of leader, where Jordan is just, hey, either you got to come with it or you got to sit your ass down. And, to a much lesser degree, I was the same way. If guys wouldn't get out there and compete, I used to be pissed, man. We talked about Gary Payton. I remember one game, I had to guard Gary and I had to score all the points. So it was just really tough. And I remember asking one of my teammates just to give me a break, man, and bring the ball up the court. And he looked at me like I was crazy because he was scared to bring the ball up against GP. So I was like, all right, damn it, give me the damn ball. I'll bring it up. But looking back, I wish I could have been a little bit more supportive of some of my teammates instead of being so hard on everybody, expecting them to be committed and play at the same level that I did.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, looking back myself at my career as well, is the emphasis wasn't on leadership and as far as, if you didn't have a great mentor that could show you how to be a great leader, we just, pretty much just did what we saw. And if we had a guy that yelled and screamed, and when we were playing basketball, most coaches were not a guy that were going to get you and talk to you and say, hey, man, I love you. You're the greatest. They're going to curse you out, and they're going to, MF you and go at you. And, we're kind of, that's the environment we were brought up in. And so that's kind of the way we were. And, I understand where you're coming from with that. And it is hard, guys like MJ. I mean, he just is a one-trick pony, and he knows one speed. And I think it was really on later in life when I started to see different leadership examples as well. And the greatest leaders that I've seen, and you do a lot of stuff for ESPN, Pac-12 Network, those coaches that just know those different buttons to push for different players. And, I played for a system guy at Utah. You're going to go to Utah, they're going to plug and play, and one of the coaches that you played for that, I see as one of the great, coaching examples is Lenny Wilkins. Did you, take anything from him,
Oh, he was always, I've got more respect for Lenny Wilkins as a man than I do as a coach for what what all the stuff he accomplished. Because when you see him, Steven, man, it's just he doesn't have that ego. He's not walking like I'm Lenny Wilkins. I'm the SHNIT. He just was never that kind of guy, man. That's one of the things that I admired about him. And I stumbled across an old game program that said, it had me on the picture with Lenny in the background saying, learning from the master when I played with the Atlanta Hawks. And it just was a blessing to play for him, man. Because like you said, he wasn't a guy that was going to jump all over you and cuss you out. But when you disappointed him, you knew because he,
oh, really?
Look, he just wouldn't say nothing to you. So you're like, oh, man, I done messed up. So I don't think nobody ever wanted to disappoint Coach. But, just what a great guy, man. And like I said, a guy that I have respect for to this day. I check on him at least, once or twice in a month. Now that this stuff is going on, I try to check on him and see how he's doing. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. What about your college coach? Do you have a good relationship with him?
No, I had two coaches when I was in college. So there was a legendary coach named Marv Harshman that was at the University of Washington who retired when I came in 1985. For the people that's out there listening, they probably remember. I know they remember Detlef Schrempf. So Detlef Schrempf was probably one of the greatest players ever played at the University of Washington. Then it was Chris Velp after him. Both of those guys played for Marv Harshman. Then Marv Harshman retired, and I came in with a guy named Andy Russo, and I played for him for 3 years. And then my senior year, I got a new coach, and I talked to Andy Russo a little bit, but the guy I had my senior year, man, he didn't like me, and I didn't like him. And if I saw him today, I'd probably run over his ass if I saw him walking in the street. So, there ain't no love lost there with that relationship.
So what I got from that story is you got two coaches fired and you wanted to get a third fired is what I got.
I don't know what you're listening at.
Oh, man. So did guys like Detlef come back and hoop with y'all?
Yeah, Detlef's one of the hardest working guys I've ever played with, man. I mean, when you got in shape in the summertime to get in shape, you had to get in shape before that to work out with him because he just was a workaholic, man. I mean, 6'9", and used to beat me off the dribble. I mean, Detlef was ahead of his time. He had a phenomenal game. Yep, Detlef used to come back. Chris Velp wasn't so much of a pickup basketball guy because he was 7 foot, so I thought it was hard for him. But Detlef for sure was a gym rat.
One thing I got from Det when I played with him in Seattle was he was really good at using his arm, and he would just go under you and just scoop it up and like create that foul. But that in his hands, like he would grab it and palm it. And, I didn't have big hands. Like point guards on my teams would have bigger hands than I did. So I couldn't do all the crazy stuff with the ball like that. But Def had those big hands. And I just remember him finger rolling it backwards all the time under I mean, he was, kind of transcended as a player because he was playing the small forward at a 6'9", and he could do so much. He could post up, he could shoot the three, he could pass. He had that high basketball IQ. So yeah, no surprise his success after playing as well.
Yeah, that was ahead of his time, man. And you're right. I remember that move. He knew how to get up underneath you and draw that foul. He was one of the masters at it. And like I said, I just think he was ahead of his time, man. At his size, being able to play on the perimeter like he was able to, he would fit in perfectly in today's game.
So you had after Washington, you didn't get drafted, correct?
Correct.
So did you think you were going to get drafted? What was it like going through that whole process and not getting drafted?
Man, it was scary. I could feel it in my senior year that my draft status was slipping, because I was coming off 2 years all Pac-10. I thought I was the second best player in the conference behind Gary Payton, but my senior year, obviously Gary went number 2. I think Derek Coleman went number 1. Gary went number 2. Judd Bushler got drafted, and so did a guy named Trevor Wilson who played out of UCLA, and I didn't get drafted, man. So I was stunned. I didn't know what to do, but I kind of felt it, because during the season, like I said, I got a new coach, man. The guy just didn't like me. He really didn't showcase me. And when we were going on the road and play teams, I would have opposing coaches like George Ravin at USC going, "Oh, man, I see what's going on. If you need any help, if you need anybody to make a call for you after the season, just let me know." And as I went around the league, a lot of the coaches said the same thing. But I thought I had done enough, to get invited to some seniors tournaments like Port Smith's. And they used to have an all-star game in Phoenix. They had one in Orlando. And I said, well, you know what? You probably done enough to get invited to those. And then when you get to the camps, you can just show everybody what you can do. And I never went, man. I never got invited. And I'll never forget, the draft was coming up, and I was like, damn, I ain't been to no seniors tournaments. I ain't heard from nobody. So I went to the school, and we had a black assistant coach that I felt I could go talk to. And I went and talked to him. And I never forget seeing some letters on his desk, man. And he had to leave the meeting that we had to go talk to the head coach. And when he did that, I picked up one of the letters and opened it up. It had my name and one of my teammates, who was also a senior, and it said, "This is your last chance to get your seniors some exposure."
Oh,
and I
wow.
said, damn. And then there was a couple other letters on his desk. I opened them up. Man, I had been invited to everything. So when I got to the summer league, back then the summer league used to be at Loyola Marymount in L.A.
Yeah.
I run into Gary Bush, and they said, "Damn, L, how you doing, man? We didn't know you wanted to play." And I was like, "What do you mean you didn't know I wanted to play?" He's like, "Man, your name was on the list for all these all-star tournaments. We never saw you, so we didn't know you wanted to play." I never got the letters, man. So to this day, when I tell you I could run over that damn coach, I'm dead serious. I'm not joking at all. I mean, that was horrible, man.
Now that's understandable right there, and it's weird when you have coaches that are in that profession, because I think we've all had coaches that have touched us in a positive way, that are in the game for the right reason, that are doing it to uplift people, doing it to show people, because we've all learned those life lessons from playing sports that are instrumental in us in the future. But to have someone just to try to curtail your career like that at the most important time. But I think really the truest test of your characters is how you ended up, because as we both know, since we both got into the NBA, not drafted, there is nothing in this world more difficult than getting into the league and staying in the league as an undrafted free agent. And for you to do it, and then to be an 8-year guy, I mean, the percentages to get there are ridiculous. To get there and play more than 3 years are even less. And then to do it for 8 years, I mean, hats off to you for that. I mean, that just shows that, and I think that's that resilience that I'm sure, looking back on it, you probably didn't like that to happen, but I mean, you learned something about yourself being able to do that, for sure.
No, I appreciate that, Stephen. And I tell you, man, it wasn't easy. But I think one of the things that helped me was that, I was here in Seattle. So I had a chance to go play pickup in the summertime against Nate McMillan, Detlef Shrimp, Sean Kemp, all those guys, man. I'll never forget, it just was a measuring stick. When you can hang with those guys in the summertime, you can play. And that's what I did. So the only regret I had is my first year I went overseas. I went to Germany, and I wish I would have went straight to the CBA, because I think if I'd have went to the CBA my first year out of school, I think I would have made it to the league a lot faster. But I was out of sight, out of mind. But you're right. the one thing I don't regret is I think when you do make it and you're undrafted, you cherish it. You know, you definitely appreciate it. You get there, and you don't take anything for granted.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I played with the Jazz and then went overseas, came back, played with the Jazz, and then I went overseas for 2 whole seasons. And it was after the second season because I would always be frustrated overseas, knowing that I was an NBA player. And then I
Yeah,
just told myself, because that's tough because they're offering you a lot of money overseas. CBA, you're getting maybe $28,000 if you play the whole season. So it's like, okay, well, it's hard to turn down 300 for 30.
yeah.
And I think that one year I said, I'm an NBA player and I'd rather play in the CBA than be frustrated overseas. And when I did that, I was the first player, brought up. And I think that was a year that you won because I wasn't in the CBA because, I left early.
like, like Chucky
So
Brown.
you're welcome. Hey, you're welcome.
Yeah, I used to, I still tell kids today when I speak to kids, man, playing in Europe is great, but when you're a kid, you dream of playing in the NBA. I don't know anybody that dreams of, oh, I want to go play for Olympiacos, so I want to go play for that team over in Europe. You dream of playing in the NBA, and Europe is great, but you want to be where the best players in the world are, and that's the NBA for sure.
So as far as, being the MVP for that 1994-95 team in Yakima, I mean, would you take that? I mean, because you guys won the chip, you're the MVP. Where do you put that in like your row of accomplishments as far as, pecking order?
I think I would put that number two. Obviously, number one was big. I never forget, man. Like I'm sitting outside doing this interview with you. I remember one day, we won the championship. I had got called up by the Denver Nuggets, and I got sent back after my 10-day contract. So I was depressed. Well, we went on to win the CBA championship, and I just remember I did a workout for the Houston Rockets, and Rudy Tomjanovich, the head coach. I don't know if this still happens to today. Usually, it's probably somebody else working the guys out, but I got worked out just one-on-one with Rudy Tomjanovich, and I remember he put me through a bunch of shooting drills because they had Elijah Wan, and they were looking for shooters, and I remember telling him, I did pretty good, but I remember saying, Coach, can we do it again? I know I can shoot the ball better. He was like, you shot the ball great. I was like, yeah, but I can shoot the rock better than that. I was a little nervous. Now I know what to expect. Can we do it again? So he put me through the drill again, man, and I just shot the lights out. But they had just won back-to-back championships, so I was like, ain't no way in hell I'm going to be on this team. So I went home, didn't really know what to expect, and then my phone rang, man. I'll never forget it. I was standing on my back deck. It was the summertime, and it was Rudy T. He was saying, we want to offer you a contract. And I said, what? He was like, yeah, we want to sign you. And, man, I remember letting out this loud scream. So I would say that's number one on my list. But winning the championship in Yakima I'll put that number two because when I first got to Yakima in 92, 93, we were the doormat of the league, man. I mean, we used to get smashed by everybody. And to go from being a doormat of the league to 3 years later winning the championship and being named MVP, that was pretty special because, we had a special team. One of your former teammates, Kevin Holland. We had a guy, Chucky Brown, who had a long career in the NBA, Reggie Jordan, Aaron Swinson, Anthony Goldwire, Eric Martin, who's an assistant coach at West Virginia. I mean, Dale Demps, the former general manager for the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, man, we had a squad.
Yeah.
Just probably was the most fun team I've ever played on because you had respect for every guy that was at every position because every guy played their role to the team. We had a guy named Curtis Kitchen who was a big 6'9" guy. He wasn't a great offensive player, but, man, he broke his hand and we couldn't win a damn game, Steven. And that made me realize the importance of role players because we just couldn't win a game without him. And when he came back, we went back to rolling. So I would put that Yakima championship number two behind getting signed by the world champion. I mean, I went from Yakima in the CBA, man, to starting with the world champion Houston Rockets. I mean, that was a bit mind-blowing for me.
Okay, I want to get to the Rockets, but first I want you to tell me how it felt and a little bit of the emotions that went through your head and your psyche when you go to the Nuggets and you go back because as a player you leave the CBA and you're like, hey, I don't want to come back, and then you come back and it's like, oh, I knew you'd be back, come on back with us, like what did it feel like? What were your emotions then?
Man, I remember when I got the call saying, Denver wants to bring you in for a 10-day contract because I don't know if the viewers out there know what a 10-day is, but the 10-day is just that. You sign with the NBA team for 10 days. And if you play well, they either renew your 10-day or they sign you for the rest of the season. So I actually was filling in for a guy named Robert Pack, who was my high school teammate, which was kind of,
Pac-Man.
I went to Denver and filled in for Robert, but this was before social media and cell phones and all of that stuff. So I never really communicated with him because I think we only probably had one game in Denver, and then the rest of our games was on the road, so I really didn't see him. But I remember Dale Ellis, man, just heckling me. He was my teammate, heckling me, and I was nervous as hell. I think I only shot 2 free throws on that 10-day that I had, and when they decided not to sign me to another 10-day for the rest of the season, man, I was depressed. I went back. I didn't go back to the CBA right away. I had to go home and regather myself because I was like, damn, I finally got my opportunity and I blew it. But I didn't really play, so it wasn't like they put me out there and I played bad. Bernie Bickerstaff was the coach, but they had Chris Jackson, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Now they had Jalen Rose. They had some really good guards, and I just didn't get a chance to play. So when I went back to Yakima, man, I was in a bad space until we got to the playoffs, and I kind of got my head together. And like I said, we ended up winning the championship. I ended up being named MVP, and you always hear something about people want winners. And I'll say this, man, to the young people that's out there listening, you can put up numbers on a bad team, but if you put up 3/4 of those numbers on a good team, everybody's going to get an opportunity. And like I said, that team that I was on, Chucky Brown got called up to the NBA, won a championship with the Houston Rockets. Larry Robinson is another guy that got called up, won a championship with the Houston Rockets. I got called up. Reggie Jordan went on to play in the NBA. Dell Demps went on to play in the NBA. Anthony Goldwire went on to play in the NBA. So all of our guys got opportunities, man, for winning that championship in Yakima. So, for all the young listeners out there, you can go out there and average 35 and not win. But if you average 25 and you're winning, I mean, everybody gets a chance to eat.
Yeah. So, okay. So you dealt with that defeat, kind of really wanted to defeat because you didn't get an opportunity. But again, that's a big blow to your psyche because, I used to tell people, when you're in the CBA, the ice wasn't even cold, compared to the NBA. So you finally get your shot with the Rockets. And not only do you get a shot, you get signed, but you ended up starting over Kenny Smith and Sam I Am Cassell. I mean, take me through, veterans camp. How did that go? Were they hurt or you just wanted it more? You're like, I'm not going back to Yakima. How did that happen?
Oh, man, I was hungry. I was hungry. And I never forget when I signed, I went in there and I'm looking at Elijah Wan. I'm looking at Clyde Drexler. I'm looking at Rudy Tomjanovich. And I had to pinch myself. I was like, damn, this was the world champs, man. I mean, I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And I'll never forget, Steven, I had a cousin that lived in Houston. So I called him and I said, yo, cuz, I'm in town. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I just signed with the Rockets. He said, no, really, what are you doing here? This little kid who was dribbling around the neighborhood and stuff, But we went into training camp, man. Training camp was in Galveston, Texas. I don't know if the Rockets still hold their camp there, but that's where they used to hold their camp back then. We used to take that little 45 to hour drive to Galveston and stay in a hotel there for training camp. And I could shoot the rock, man. And when you're playing with guys like Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, people got to double team him, so there's going to be a lot of wide open shots. And I felt like I was the best shooter on that team. And it had Kenny Smith, it had Sam Cassell, it had Robert Horry. But to be honest with you, I didn't feel like any of them could shoot the wide open jumper like I could. But right away, I wasn't playing. And one day, Rudy came to me and he said, hey, Rook. He called me Rook. I was 27 years old, Steve. Coach, 27. He was like, yeah, I know, but you're a rookie. So he called me Rook. I said, all right. He said, I see how hard you work. And he said, man, keep working hard. I'm going to give you a chance. And I said, all right. And then one day, I'll never forget it, man. He said, we were in Atlanta, getting ready to play against Mookie Blaylock. And he called me and said, you're starting tonight. And I said, what? He said, yeah, you're going to start tonight. Be ready. I said, tonight? Against Mookie Blaylock? He said, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, damn, can I start tomorrow night?
Right.
So my first 3 games, man, I struggled bad. I don't think I made a shot, And then finally that 4th game, I settled down. And I think I had a stretch where I started for 30 games. But no, Kenny Smith wasn't hurt. He just, he hit a stretch where I guess they felt like they wanted a different look. And they liked bringing Sam off the bench. Sam probably should have been the starter, but Sam wanted to shoot up all the balls. He didn't give a damn about Elijah Wan and Drexler. Sam wanted to shoot the ball. So Rudy felt like if he brought Sam in with the second group when Elijah Wan and Clyde were out, he could do his thing. And they knew that I was going to do the right thing, running the plays and only taking the shots when they were available if somebody kicked it back out to me. So that's how that worked out, man. So I started for about 30 games, and I just wish I could have had a chance to start in the playoffs. And when the playoffs rolled around, Rudy came to me and said, "Hey, man, I just want to make a change back to Kenny. We won 2 championships with this guy. And what can I say? We beat the Lakers in the first round, but you just saw the Bulls played the Sonics, and the Sonics beat us in the second round. We could have got past Seattle. We probably would have been playing the Chicago Bulls in that 1996 NBA Finals.
Well, you talked about your ability to hit the wide open shot, and you shot 41% for 8 years. That is phenomenal for a 3-point shooter. What were the sort of workouts, or how did you get to be such a consistent 3-point shooter? Because that's not easy, because people will say all the time, like you mentioned, hitting that wide open shot, but you're playing against the top defenders in the world that can close out in the drop of a dime. So how did you become that kind of a dead-eye shooter from 3?
I think things changed for me when I got to college, because when I was in high school, I'm 6'3", but when I was in high school, man, I had some bounce. I had some off the runs, Steven. I could take off, man, and finish. So in high school, you might play against 1 or 2 guys your height the whole year. Everybody else is smaller, so you can get to the cup anytime you want. And I remember when I took my recruiting trip to the University of Washington, I played the pickup with them on my recruiting trip, and they had 2 7-footers. They had a guy, Chris Velpo, I told you about, and then they had another 7-foot guy named Flosey. And I remember driving to the basket, and Chris Velt blocked my shot without jumping. So I said, damn, going to the hole ain't going to work. I got to find a way to become a better shooter. So I redshirted my freshman year, and all I did, man, was go in the intramural center, man. I borrowed one of my high school teammates' books. It was called Basketball is My Game by Lieberman, and it said The Art of Shooting. And I just studied that damn book, Stephen, man, and did those shooting drills every day. And I got more and more confidence just playing with the regular students on campus in the intramural center. And I became a workoutaholic. The more success I had, the more hooked I was. So every day, man, I just would spend 2-3 hours just shooting jumpers, And like I said, by the time my sophomore year rolled around, I felt like I couldn't miss, man. If somebody left me open, the dudes I played with would be pissed at me like, damn, they just knew I wasn't going to miss. And it just was a great feeling, man. But anything in life, if you want to be good at, for the young people that's out there listening, you got to put the work in, man. And when you put the work in, the results will be there. But you don't just walk in the gym and hit a button and turn it on. We just saw that with The Last Dance. Even Michael Jordan, when he took those 2 years off of baseball, came back and got beat by Orlando. So you got to put the work in, and that's what I did. And I went from a guy that used to drive to the basket all the time to a guy that turned into a three-point shooter.
I remember we played Georgetown with Mutombo and Mourning, and Dikembe blocked my dunk attempt without jumping. So that's a humbling moment, I think, for anyone. I'll never forget that. But you talked about redshirting your first year at Washington. What was that like? I mean, that's something that I think was a little bit more prevalent in the 80s, but they don't do it as much now. Was that a tough blow when your coach came to you, or did you know you were going to get redshirted when you went there, or how did that work out?
I didn't know I was going to get redshirted, but I was young. So when I came to the University of Washington in that fall of 1985, I was 16 years old, man. I didn't turn 17 until like December. So my dad had started me a year early in school.
Oh, okay.
And started me a year early. But the real reason was, I told you Marv Harshman had retired. So we had a guy named Andy Russo. Some of the real basketball fans that have been around a while might remember Andy Russo from Louisiana Tech, where he had Karl Malone in 1985. So he took the job and got the job a little bit late, because Louisiana Tech, led by Karl Malone, I think they made it to the Elite Eight in the NCAA tournament that year. So when he came in, I was the only freshman that he signed. He signed 2 other junior college guys, a guy named Greg Hill, who played at El Camino Community College in L.A., and then a big guy named Phil Zevenbergen, who played at Edmonds Community College here. And then I was the only freshman, so he said, hey, I don't want you to be the only freshman in your class, so we're going to redshirt you. And, it was a good thing for me. My dad was pissed, though, man. I remember my dad had went out and he bought a VCR, and he bought a color TV.
Wait, I can't use my TV?
So when I told him the coach wanted the redshirt, he was pissed, man. He was talking about coming up here, taking me out of school and transferring me to somewhere else. And he sold a VCR, and he sold a TV. But it worked out great for me, because it gave me a year to learn the system, adjust to the college life academically. And by the time I hit the court as a redshirt freshman, I was ready to roll, and I started all 4 years of my career at the University of Washington. So for me, redshirting was a blessing.
Well, not only were you able to, adjust academically, but, from the stories that I heard, you're able to adjust socially as well. So you were a pretty, a fixture on the, bar circuit and, hanging
No,
out.
I ain't never been no clubber, man. I'm
No,
from
I
New
know.
Orleans,
I'm
you
messing
know.
with you.
But you know what? You joke about that, Barter. I mean, Steven. But you know what? People used to always tease me, and go, man, you're not from New Orleans. You don't drink. You don't hang out. And that just was never my thing, man. Because I grew up in the hood, and half my neighborhood was alcoholics and drug addicts. So that was the last thing that I wanted to do, man. But like I said, redshirting was a really good thing for me because you're right. The social scene. I mean, Steven, when you get to college, when you're living at home, you got to be home, at midnight when you're a senior, and when you get to college, you got nothing but freedom, man. So that
That's
first
it.
year, I had a little bit, being away from home. But I look back, it was a good thing for me.
So, of your 8-year careers in the NBA, and you played Denver, Rockets, Hawks, Hornets, Clippers. Would you put the Rockets as your best experience? I know you had a lot of good, playing experience with the Hawks as well with Lenny Wilkins. Where would you say that you played your best ball?
Oh, my best ball was actually with Atlanta. I think, and
Yeah,
that's where I from because we had more of a team philosophy. In Houston, it was give the ball to Dream, give the ball to Clyde. I can remember, man, I can remember Dream used to be on me. He wanted it every time. Like, Dream, we got 4 dudes on the team, man. But he wanted it every time. That was the most, I think that was probably the most, what can you say? It was like traveling with the Beatles, playing with traveling with the Jackson 5 at the height of their success, playing with the Rockets. But I enjoyed playing with Atlanta a little bit more because Lenny Wilkins had some great sets, man, and he was a guard, so most of his plays were designed for guards. I played behind Mookie Blaylock and Steve Smith, so that's where I had the most fun. I would definitely say Atlanta, and I love the city of Atlanta, man. I hated to leave. I wish I could have finished my career out there because it just was a great city. Playing for Lenny was a great experience. When you're a guard and you get beat, Dikembe Mutombo's back there. Well, hell, go ahead on and beat me then if you want to, because
right.
the guy's not going to score over him.
How would the Dream ask for the ball? What were some of the ways he would tell you, like, give me the ball?
Give it to me quickly is what he would tell me. Man, but you know what? He was so damn good, Steven, man. I mean, he was amazing. And I'll never forget when we played against Orlando Magic, 95-96. That's the year I think Orlando, the year before Orlando might have went to the championship. But he would tell me, you got to give it to me quickly on the perimeter, because this Shaq guy, he is strong. So I want to take him up. That's what he would say, man. And he would be on me, man. And, I can't argue with him. You give him the rock, you was going to get an assist because Dream was a beast. Second best player I probably ever seen behind Michael Jordan, man, was Hakeem Olajuwon.
Really?
Yeah.
What was it about him that you put him in that position?
He was a competitor, man. He loved the game. He was the first guy at practice, the last guy to leave. I'll never forget that year I played with the Rockets. He came to me one day after practice and said, let's play one-on-one. And I'm like, looking at him, I'm like, dude, you're 7 foot. I can't guard you in the post. And he was like, no, we play from the perimeter. And I said, what? He's like, yes, we play from the perimeter. So I said, okay, thinking, oh, I'm going to tear his ass up. He can't guard me out there, right? I couldn't guard him, man. People don't realize Olajuwon had a cold-blooded jump shot, and he had handles like a guard. People don't understand that. But Steven, back then they didn't let the bigs play out on the perimeter and shoot threes and stuff like that, man. So a lot of people never got a chance to see that side of Olajuwon, but he wore my ass out in that game at one-on-one for the perimeter, man. I still can't believe how nice he was with his handles and with his jump shot. But Hakeem Olajuwon was a beast, man. Not only offensively, but defensively. And the better the competition, the higher he raised his level to play, man. Whenever we played against Patrick Ewing, Shaquille O'Neal, David Robinson, guys like that, he took his game to another level. You could just see it in warmth that he had a different mindset going into that game, man. And that's what made him one of the all-time greats.
Well, being from Texas, they were one of my favorite teams, out of the, Phi Slamma Jamma when he went to the University of Houston.
Yeah.
So I love me some Dream and man, Mishaw, Clyde,
Larry,
all of them,
Clyde, Benny Andrews, that squad, man. They
Yeah.
had a big fan of Fly Slamma Jamma back then as well. Yep.
Yeah. So you got to defend both MJ and Kobe. What were the differences that you saw in their games that made them, unique?
You know what? There wasn't a lot of difference, man. I'm gonna be honest. Kobe's the closest I've ever seen to Michael, and every time I talk about those two, I call Kobe Michael's shadow. I think that's how
Yeah.
close he was to Michael's game. He was like his shadow, man. I think Michael was a little bit more aggressive, attacking the basket, but I think both of them had that killer instinct. Both of them was great athletes, but both of them, most importantly, were fundamentally sound and really had high basketball IQs, man. The first time I played against Kobe, he was a rookie with the Lakers, and I think I was with Atlanta, and I remember telling my teammate Chucky Brown, I said, "Man, this dude's gonna be a beast." He's like, "Yeah, he's gonna be all right." I'm like, "No, man, he's gonna be special." You could just see that there was something a little bit different about him. And then Michael, man, I mean, I've never seen anybody like Michael Jordan, man. My rookie year, Steven, I used to go around the league, and guys didn't know who I was, so they wouldn't guard me, And then I hit a couple jumpers, and they're like, "Oh, I got to guard his ass. He can shoot." I remember Derek Harper one time, man, talking to me the whole time I'm bringing the ball up because he would lock his hand on my hip. Back then you could hand check, so I
And
couldn't throw.
he was strong too. Like D Hart was strong.
Yo, he was talking to me the whole time. So, man, what's your game like? What you do? I ain't never seen you before.
What?
I'm like, I'm trying to make this damn team, man. Leave me alone. But the first time I played against Michael Jordan, Steve, and he was on my ass like white on rice, man. So I'm thinking to myself, damn, did somebody tell him I said something about him? So finally I asked him, I said, "Yo, man, why you guarding me so tough?" I said, "When I play against veteran guys, they don't even pay attention to me." He looked me dead in my eye. He said, "Man, I just want you to know why I'm considered the best." And ever since then, man, I've always had respect for him because he played me like I was a Joe Dumars or a Ron Harper or somebody like that, man. And basically I was a nobody. But he didn't care. And he didn't take no plays off. I swear to God, man, he was guarding me. I think we played him in the 97 playoffs, man. And I felt like I was being double teamed, but it was just him. That's how intense his defense was. Mike was just a beast, man. He was a flat out beast.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the difference between Michael Jordan, because the average player, and remember, NBA is the top 1% of the world, but the average NBA player is going to take plays off. Some might even take a game off because they're going to go against an Eldridge Recasner or Stephen Howard. But to MJ, everybody was at that level. And I think that's what, as you mentioned, that's what set him apart, because he wasn't playing just for that game. He was playing for the bigger picture, because maybe in 2 years you're an all-star, or maybe they're going to see you in the playoffs. And he wanted to put that little memory in your mind so you can have the slightest bit of hesitation, the slightest bit of doubt. And, he fed off that. And I think that's what made him so special, because as they say in The Last Dance, he would create scenarios to make him upset or to get an edge or to get angry in a game. And kind of like, that's where I view Russell Westbrook, because no one is able to play at that level of enthusiasm that Russell does. I mean, he has 100% every moment. And Jordan was just relentless, but I don't know how Russell gets the energy that he does. But, those special guys had that special type of inner drive to create those scenarios that they just can go ham on everyone. And, to be the greatest player of all time to do that is really scary. But, that's what makes Black Jesus, Black Jesus.
I agree with you 100%, man. And, you're dead on about Westbrook. The guy brings it every night. But, I used to look at Michael when we would play him, and I'll never forget in that 98 season, when he announced that he was going to retire, it was going to be his last year. We had a game in the Georgia Dome because they had torn down the Omni, and Phillips Arena is what it was named after that. Wasn't built yet. So we played in the Georgia Dome. It was over 62,000 fans, man, at a damn regular basketball game. It was insane. But I say this, and I've been saying it for years, Hollywood couldn't write a script for a movie better than what Michael Jordan did on the court live, man. I mean, he never disappointed. You heard him say it in the Last Dance. If people were going to spend their money and watch him for 3 hours, he didn't want to disappoint him. And that's exactly what he did. He never took a play off, man. He always delivered. And I got the utmost respect for him, man. And like I said, he's just the greatest animal I've ever seen on the basketball court, man. Just completely relentless. When I hear all this talk about Ron and KD, and I'm just like, come on, man. Really, I don't think people understand, Steven. You played the game, so I don't think the average fan understands how hard it is to be the best offensive player and be the best damn defensive time. Usually you're going to make a decision to do one or the other because it just takes so much energy. I mean, if you're going to average 25, that's hard as hell. If you're going to be a lockdown defender like Gary Payton, Dennis Rodman, that's hard as hell. But when you're both of them like Michael was, man, that's special.
Well, and when I was talking with Rod Strickland, he was saying that for him, MJ is the GOAT because he was a witness to his greatness. And I think that's what this generation missed, because when we would watch him play, he would have those moments almost every game where he would do something like a 60-point game, or he would go on a quarter and have 24 straight points, or he would do some move and maneuver through 3 different people, something. And he would do that, and the anticipation and just the air around him was so electric. And when he would do those, I mean, like you said, you can't write a script to equal to what he did, because no one would have the imagination to do something that far-fetched and that out of this world, to write the stuff that Michael Jordan actually did in games. And if you didn't see him, and you look at some YouTube highlights, you don't get to see the whole game and like where they were before, or how they body slammed him 3 plays before. You just see, oh, he had 60 points. Well, KD's done that, or Klay Thompson has done that. But I think when you take it out of context, but if you see his whole body of work and you witness that from A to Z, there's no way that you can't say that he's the greatest, just because of that, like you said, that movie-like, script that he had for his whole career.
I said this before the Last Dance started. Somebody had posted some highlights of Michael Jordan. Everybody was commenting on it and stuff. And I made the comment that, yeah, you guys are looking at the highlights, but you don't see the fear his opponents had the night before the game. And I think the biggest line I took from this last episode of The Last Dance was Glenn Rice talking about B.J. Armstrong talking smack to Mike. And you saw the Brad Smith series. And Glenn Rice said, you don't want to add any fuel to his fire. You don't want to wake him up. And that's it, man, because you played against him just like I did, Steven. You remember how some of your teammates didn't want to lace him up against it, man, because he was going to bring it. And you go to Chicago, everybody loves Chicago. They want to go out. You ain't going out the night before that game. You want to get your rest. And quite frankly, you might not get no damn sleep, because that ain't the game you want to bring your girl to either, because he's going to embarrass your ass. I mean, the dude, man, he brought it every single night. But I just think that's it. You didn't want to say anything to piss him off, because if you did, you was going to get it, just like Bradford Smith got it, and just like B.J. Armstrong got it. He did that to everybody, man. I remember the media kept talking about how he had never dunked on Dikembe. And I was like, oh, Lord, here we go. They're gonna make this something that they probably shouldn't. Yeah. And I remember he Dikembe, and he gave Dikembe his own finger wag. You just couldn't challenge that guy, man, because if you did, he was determined to get you.
Well, you took that Glenn Rice as the quote of these last 2 series that they played today. Mine was in the first episode they played today, when they were interviewing him, when they were interviewing Jerry Krause, and the guy asked him about backstabbing or whatever, and Jerry got pissed, and then he left, and then the rest of the reporters, one of the guys was like, "Way to go, Craig." That was hilarious. I mean, we have a different Craig from Friday, but I think this "way to go, Craig," like, that's gonna jump up somewhere where everyone is just like, "Way to go, Craig." I mean, he pissed off Jerry Krause.
Got the interview short, but Jerry Krause, man, I just don't know. I just can't understand what he was thinking. Steve. I mean, you got the #1 draw in all the sports in the world.
Yeah.
He's still in the prime. And you tell him, well, your coach ain't coming back. I don't give a damn if y'all go 82-0. That's the dumbest thing ever in the history of management.
I don't know if he didn't think MJ would leave, because if you have a guy who's the greatest competitor, he needs that competition. So you're like, there's no way he's going to leave, because he needs that outlet, or he will go crazy. It's like the sun that can't shine. And I think that's where, the death of his father came into play. But I think it was just 2 gamblers. And as we saw, Jordan was the ultimate gambler, and he's like, I'm going to do it my way, because he's the greatest of all time. That leads me to my next question. You saw the relationship with his dad, and you mentioned your dad getting upset when you didn't play that first year. What was your relationship like with your dad, and how did that influence you? As far as a young player playing, I'm sure he, had a lot to do with you playing and teaching you and stuff like that. And then as you grew older.
You know what, Bardo? My dad, man, was 5'8", and he had a gut, man. He looked like he was about 7 or 8 months pregnant. I don't know what he looked like when he was younger, but never took me to the gym. You know, my uncles, my mom's brothers, who I start going to the playground with when I was about 9, 10 years old, and I started watching basketball games. That's how I fell in love with Dr. J, watching games with my uncles. But I remember when I made it to high school, and I started getting some, I started getting some articles and stuff written about me. I remember one day my dad came home. You know, he went to work. He came home. He kicked his feet up on the couch. He was reading the newspaper, and he's reading the newspaper, and he's looking at me, and he's reading the newspaper, and looking at me. So he's reading the article about me, and he was like, looking at me like, "Is this you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me, man. I'm pretty good. You should come check me out." So he started coming to my high school games. But, man, he was so nervous, Steven, man. He couldn't sit in the stands. He just paced the hallway the whole time. Never really said anything to me about basketball. There's only one thing I ever remember my dad saying. He used to look at me and say, "Man, you know what? I'm watching you out there." He's like, "Your first step is quick. They can't stop you from going baseline." And that's all he ever said, man. And I had a great relationship with my dad, man. You know, when we were watching The Last Dance, it showed that B. Water, the Bruce Lee story. And I think one of the joys of my life is, man, whenever a new Bruce Lee movie came out, me and my dad went to see it. That was kind of our thing. We were gonna go see all the Bruce Lee movies. And unfortunately, man, my dad passed away my freshman year at UW, actually when I redshirted. So never had a chance to see me play college basketball. He never had a chance to see me play in the NBA. And when I was watching those parts about Michael when his dad died, man, I almost teared up a couple times because I just know how that relationship is. You know, it's a special relationship, man. And I've always had a void in my heart. I've always missed my dad, and I knew my career would have been different if he would have been alive. Because I look back and I think if my dad would have been alive, I definitely wouldn't have got drafted because he wouldn't have put up with that bullshit that I had to deal with those coaches in college. Man, he just wouldn't have did it. So when you ask me what kind of relationship we had, we had a great relationship, but it wasn't based around basketball, man. I mean, I went on the playground. I was out there all day, all night. And all my parents knew was that I was staying out of trouble, and that's all they cared about. But it's not like my dad took me to the gym like I try to take my son, and work on this and work on that. I mean, I learned playing against the older guys in the neighborhood, Steven. The stuff that worked, I kept with me. The stuff that didn't, I threw it out. I used to get beat up. I used to get ran home. They used to take my ball. I remember breaking glass all over the court when they would take my ball growing up in the Ninth Ward. But once I got around 15, 16 years old, it was payback time, and I started giving them older cats the business, man. But my dad had a lot of respect, so nobody would really mess with me because they knew my dad he was like the street gangster back then, man, in New Orleans. But we had a
Nice.
great relationship, man. There's not too many times, every time when I had a game, man, they would play the national anthem. My dad was in the military, and I remember in the military, whenever a former military person dies, they give him one of the United States flags, man. So whenever they would play the national anthem, I would see that flag. I would always think about my dad before the game. So he was always with me in that sense.
Yeah, it's very special. And sounds like your dad was a lot like mine. My dad wasn't athletic either. And, he wouldn't work me out as well. Now, he would drop me off at the gym, but, never work me out. But he was always present. And, I lost my dad a year ago. So I know how you feel about that, void, when you accomplish things really in just the day to day type of things. So I totally understand about that. When I was reading about your career, it talked about the accident you had with Derek Coleman and how you never really regained, your form after that. What happened with that?
I'll never forget that either, man. I was real close with Baron Davis, and it was Baron's birthday was that night, and he kept asking me to go out, and my wife was pregnant. She had just had my second daughter, and she was coming to Charlotte that next day. So I told BD, I said, BD, man, I'm not going out. My wife is coming tomorrow. I want to be rested. I ain't messing with y'all. So he was like, oh, man, you're going to be on lockdown. You ain't going to be able to go out. You need to come on out. So we all went out to a comedy show. I would say it was over half the team. I can't remember who the act was, but we all went out to a comedy show. Me, Baron, Derek Coleman, Anthony Mason, Bobby Fields, a lot of my teammates, man. We all went out there. And on the way back, man, we just Derek had a Range Rover, that same red Range Rover you saw in The Last Dance that Michael Jordan had. He had one of those. I think his might have been a little bit more burgundy. But all I can remember, man, is we're coming home and we're getting ready to turn over Cameron Parkway in Charlotte into our apartment complex. And I just looked out the window and I saw a bunch of lights, coming up on the car. And then the next thing I remember after that, man, is just waking up in the hospital with, doctors and nurses all over me trying to save my life. And you're right, I had a collapsed lung. I had a fracture
Wow.
right on my shooting arm, and some things were said by the team that I took personal, man, and I said some things in the media, and then after that, I just wasn't going to play. I signed a 4-year deal in Charlotte, and this accident happened at the beginning of the second year. So I had 3 years left on my deal, and I just never played again.
Really?
Yeah.
What were some things that they were trying to act like you guys were doing something wrong when you were out, or?
I think it was, obviously, DC was the driver, and was damage control because he was the highest paid player on the team, and I was a role player, so they was just trying to sweep the whole thing under the rug, man. And I was reading the papers and hearing all this stuff that they were saying that wasn't true, and so finally I called the paper and said something, and it just never, things were never right after that. I knew I wasn't gonna play, and they knew they wasn't gonna play me, and it just was a bad situation. But I really tried to get back, man. But I think by them not playing me, I think teams thought I was still hurt. And even though I did get a shot, I signed with the Clippers in 2002. But I didn't really play with those guys either. And back then, man, when you signed with the Clippers, you knew that was it. It might not have been the end, but you could sure the hell see it from there. So I felt the same exact way. Yeah.
Wow, man, that's tough. Do you still have a relationship with DC, or was there hard feelings, or?
Yeah.
Or...
Talking to you, man. David Wesley's name's popping up on my phone. I don't know if you remember Big Shot. He was the equipment manager with the Hornets. He's the equipment manager with the New Orleans Pelicans now. DC name is popping up there. We had a text chain going. I think I started about 2 weeks ago, and I was telling those guys, I hope y'all not in the last dance. And sure enough, David Wesley responded because Mike was giving him the business tonight. But I still talk to those guys. It wasn't no. I don't. It was an accident, man. That's all it was. It wasn't nothing intentional about Derek. It was some bad blood when it happened because I was in bad shape. But we've talked about it since and ironed it out. So I talk to DC all the time. I reach out to Eldon Campbell, Baron Davis, my former teammate. David Wesley. I try to talk to most of those guys, man. Just kind of reconnected with Brad Miller, and Lee Nail. And the only one I don't talk to is probably Ellie Jones. And I don't talk to Mashburn as much. But everybody else that was on that Charlotte team, I kind of keep in touch with them.
So how close were you, if you talked to the doctors, or I'm sure your wife talked to them, how close were you to losing your life?
I was close, man. Yeah. I was unconscious the whole time, from the time the accident happened to the time, that I was in the hospital. I don't remember anything,
Really?
Stephen. I almost died, man. By the grace of God, I'm still here. And thank God he had a Range Rover, man, because if he'd have had anything less, I'd have been gone, because it hit right on my passenger side door. Stephen, can you still see me, or do I need to move inside to some light?
Yeah, maybe you can. I just got a little bit more questions about this, and we're almost done. So yeah, maybe move into
Okay.
a little bit of light, because you might be light skinned, but you're not that light.
I ain't
So
that light skinned.
so how did that experience,
Oh, is
almost?
that better?
Yeah, that's better. How did that experience, almost losing your life? How did that affect your outlook on life and how you approach your kids, your family, like anything else that you might do?
Oh man, it changed everything. It changed everything. I'll never forget. I had just signed a four-year contract for $5 million. Man, I bought a new house. I remember I bought a Range Rover. I bought my mom a house. I was just like, you know what? Tomorrow ain't promised. Let me try to enjoy some of this money that I earned from my new contract through all my hard work, and it just made me appreciate things a lot more, because later on that year, my teammate Bobby Fields died, in a
Yeah.
car accident that he had, racing David Wesley. And that could have easily been me, man. But by the grace of God, he spared my life, for a reason. So I never ever took that for granted after that. And from that point on, I just tried to maximize my life, man. You always hear the saying, my wife is dad is Quincy Jones's brother. And I'll never forget, some years ago, Quincy told me, he said, live every day like it's your last, because one day it is. And after that accident, that's what I tried to do, man, because tomorrow's not promised. You just never know. Look at Kobe. That's the best example I can give, man. I mean, Kobe's no longer here, and you're like, wow, But that could be any of us, man. It could be any of us. So I don't take anything for granted anymore, man. And I try to tell my kids the same thing. I'm just their dad. They don't want to hear a damn thing I got to say, but I hope they're listening, because my mom and dad used to tell me stuff when I was young too, and I didn't really appreciate what they were saying until I had kids. And then when I had kids, I was like, damn, mom, was I like this, like that? And she was like, yeah, you sure? you know. But you hope, when you talk about your kids, man, I got 4 of them. I got 3 girls, and I got a son who's 15 who plays, and I just hope that they hear what I'm saying, and at some point they apply it.
Do you have a an aunt named Daniela?
An aunt named Daniela, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, because I asked my mom, she knew any Recasners, and she said it was someone Daniela, or something like that, that she said went to Xavier Prep with her. So I was just wondering if she
You
was
know what?
related.
That probably is, Steven, but the deal is, for me, I get asked that all the time about the Recasner name. So my dad's dad and my grandmother got a divorce and separated, and I never met him, man. My dad never talked about my grandfather, but I know he remarried and had another family, and I'm pretty sure I'm related to him because there's not a whole lot of Recasners. But every time I go home and people see that name, they always ask me, "Oh, you related to Michael Recasner? Are you related to this Recasner?" And I say, "I probably am, but I just don't know him." So that lady that you talked about, I'm pretty sure I'm related to her because there's just not a lot of Recasners, even in New
So
Orleans.
when are you going to make that reunion, come to place? Because those are your people.
You know what I did once, man? Right before Katrina, the Recasners on that side had a reunion, and I went over there and I tried to introduce myself. But honestly, I hadn't connected with them again. I live in Seattle, man, so it's not like I'm in the city of New Orleans. So when
Right.
I go home, I just try to spend my time. I was raised by my mom's people. My mom's last name is McDowell. I wasn't really around my dad's people a whole lot because we just kind of hung out. It's like most. You get married, you go where the wife is from. And now I'm in Seattle, so my kids don't know my side of the family as much as they know their mom's side.
I mean, I've never heard that, but I guess that's what you do. You go where the wife is, so I ain't mad at you. Wait,
Yeah,
I'm just messing with you. I am just messing with you. Hey, I
it's
wanna
the
I,
truth.
I wanna let you go.
It's the
Tell
truth,
everybody
Steve.
where they
It's
can
the truth.
where they tell everybody where they can follow you on social media so they can keep track of your career.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at eRecasner. That's where I'm most active. I got an IG account. It's eRecasner as well, but I'm a Twitter guy, man. I guess I'm
Yes,
kind
you
of old
are.
school. Yeah, that's where I like to hang out at. So if anybody want to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter at eRecasner.
All right, man. Well, hey, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Appreciate the stories. I'll hit you up later. Looking forward to hopefully hanging out with you this summer in Vegas. But yeah, take care. Give your moms a hug. Got that Nola love, both our moms. So give your mom a hug for me for sharing her day with me. I really appreciate that. And I'll holler at you later, man. Thanks a lot, E.
All right, Steven. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it, bro. You tell your mom I said Happy Mother's Day as well, and
All
Happy
right,
Mother's
man.
Day to all the moms.
All right, man. Appreciate it. See you later, Eldridge.
All right, later.
Hey, thanks, everybody.